Afternoon, Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. This is going to be on the Fibonacci numbers or sequence of numbers. The Fibonacci sequence, the spiritual meaning, lies in its representation of divine order, interconnectedness, and growth, appearing as a universal blueprint in nature like sunflowers, shells, galaxies, and symbolizing harmony, balance, and life's unfolding journey toward abundance, often linked to the golden ratio, which is the phi symbol of phi symbol of 1.618, or approximately 1.61%, as a key to beauty and creation. It serves as a meditation tool for understanding life's patterns, simple rules, personal evolution, and the unity between the cosmos and the self. Showing how simple rules create complex, beautiful systems. So, simply choosing love, choosing positivity, staying away from negative or unlove, staying away from darkness, embracing light, staying away from bad choices, doing good, staying with the scripture, staying away from writings that would lead us or tempt us to things that aren't good. That's a simple rule, simple enough rule that can help us create a beautiful life, beautiful system around us. So the numbers itself, it's just, I think, the main thing is just how astounding it is that all these geometric shapes, this golden ratio, which is a certain ratio that keeps coming up and repeating itself. Even the ratio came up in the way the light lands on leaves, the diagonal of the leaves in a tree or a plant that creates the opportune most sun and most moisture. Just things that are so good helps the plant or the tree grow. So it's all this goodness and love and beauty, everything that is built into creation, into the entire universe or cosmos, and how our souls came into being, how our bodies were created of love. And there's so much mystery and so much goodness in, say, our bodies and how they function. Unless, ugliness can enter in. A darkness can enter in. And sometimes we don't have a reason. But we view suffering, for example, as a negative. When we cease viewing suffering as a negative, or we cease viewing the dissolution of a relationship as a negative, then it makes all the difference. When we view things as positive rather than negative, love is perpetuated that way. And it's a matter of the self-dying, of us clinging to, say, another person who no longer wants to be in relationship. That creates a tension, a negativity, an unloving situation. And it can be with the person who's negative, no longer wants to be in the relationship. The other person, though, at some point, if the person who no longer wants is choosing not negation, is choosing negation, the other person eventually needs to let go and seek positive again. it's like it's sort of a no option kind of a thing. Unless, I mean, you can't. I often thought of that with my divorce. There was no choice. I really had no choice. If one of the persons wants negative, then that's what will happen. They can say they don't want to be married anymore, and that's pretty much it if they don't change their mind. So, and if they have been unloving, unkind, not faithful, and there's no way that they're going to be, they don't want to be, they keep proving by action, not just words, but by action, that they aren't interested in choosing good or positive, then the recourse is to get away. Let the negative go. Let the unlove go. Because it will defeat. It will create a negative, an ugliness then. So it's this has finally helped me figure that out too. Why that's just a reality. And the longer we cling to a negative, the more negative for ourselves it will be. Somebody recently said to me, well, you always think that your life wasn't fair. And I thought, well, no, but in some case, I suppose that could be the effect of it. And especially how other people would look at me if that's all I ever spoke of, or if I continued speaking of it. That's why the flashbacks need to stop. The memories of negativity they're not causing love or beauty. They cause a repeat of the negative. So this will be interesting. I was thinking it just took a breakthrough of even remembering the positive of a negative. God was showing me the positive of how I had been pointing out to God or praying to God about a priest that was very disappointing, a negative, doing negative things. Not just to me. It was a lot of matters. Hiding money and from the diocese, just going against the rules, so to speak. And he was very unpleasant to women in particular. He had a negativity in that regard. And, that could be delved into psychologically also. And then his actions were in part, he was a recovering alcoholic. He hadn't had anything to drink in many years, but his recovery program may have been flawed. So that's what his secretary thought, that he had not had a successful recovery, even though he could call himself technically a recovering alcoholic, because they can consider it always recovering, that they can't allow it that they have recovered, because it's an addiction that at any moment they could fall back into. But that some part of the process had not delved well enough, because he would react like a dry drunk would, like someone who really, really needed a drink, hadn't gotten through the recovery process to the degree that they didn't have the temper and the reaction, sort of irrational reaction of a dry drunk. So, all kinds of reasons for things. And I can get into all kinds of reasons for myself. The flashbacks or there were a lot of things, a lot of sufferings. But it just goes to show that I wouldn't complain if I had thoroughly grasped and lived the reality of of suffering not being a negative. So it's just sort of interesting. So, core spiritual meanings of divine blueprint of creation, considered a designer's hand in shaping the universe, evident in everything from DNA to galaxies. That's the sequence of the Fibonacci numbers. Here's another spiritual meaning: interconnectedness. It shows how seemingly separate things, seeds in a flower, notes in music, human growth, follow the same fundamental pattern, fostering a sense of unity. So in these, the meanings of such as these Fibonacci numbers have also to do with interconnectedness, also with growth and transformation. The outward spiral symbolizes life's natural cycles of expansion, healing, and spiritual evolution, where each stage builds on the last. Harmony and beauty linked to the golden ratio, or phi, phi. It's seen as the basis for aesthetic beauty in art, nature, and the human body. So just sort of following along, learning about the Fibonacci sequence of numbers. And they grow exponentially. So applications in spirituality and practice of these numbers. A meditation. Contemplating the sequence helps deepen understanding of life's unfolding and universal patterns. Healing. Healers use Fibonacci principles like retracement levels to align with natural rhythms for balance and transformation. Or numerology integrates the Fibonacci patterns into exploring deeper cosmic meaning and spiritual wisdom. Music and art, believed to be intuitively used by composers like Bach and Mozart to create resonant, harmonious works. Well, Hildegard of Bingen was a composer, and she developed beautiful ethereal sounds and tones and qualities that were unusual. So there's an example of how music way back developed to be harmonious and resonant, and the human spirit, the person who would develop some some musical compositions were mercy, no barking, no barking, no barking, no bark, come on, no bark. But it is really quite a spiritual gift to some of the musicians, the composers, of the tones that they would create, and in art too. You can tell a difference in different artists. Dogs, Lovey, come on, settle down. We're gonna go to the post office in a little bit in the truck, but you gotta stay calm so I want to finish this, Lovey. Personal journey, seeing your own life as a Fibonacci spiral can offer comfort during hard times, suggesting growth and restoration. Now, I don't know anything about that. I'm just reading to you what I have found online with different persons. Now, I'm a believer in God and in the spiritual, so such as the scripture or prayer, to me, would bring the unity of the soul with the Trinity that dwells within. So I move it to more a spiritual level beyond a metaphysical level. This says spiritual and practice, but they're including metaphysical. So not quite the same. Divine intelligence and order. Here we get into more spiritual. The sequence, I gotta open this up a little bit. Mercy, no honey. The sequence is often called the divine mathematics. I gotta go like this, Mercy, because I can't have you touching the computer and turning it off. If they keep up, I'll just have to do another video. It's called the divine mathematical language of nature. Its presence in diverse phenomena, from the spirals of galaxies to the arrangement of sunflower seeds, is viewed by many as evidence of an underlying cosmic intelligence or intelligent design. And we look to that intelligence as God, the creator of all. Lovey, oh, he sees somebody, a dog out there running. Evolutionary growth. See, I can't do that because you're supposed to have them on leashes. And this elderly man, though, lets his dog run out there. But his dog comes back to him, very, very trained. Lovey does not. Lovey has a very poor impulse control. And he could, but he chooses not. Evolutionary growth. The spiral represents the journey of the soul and the expansion of consciousness, because each number is the sum of the previous two. That's the Fibonacci growth, the sequence. The number is the sum of the previous two. So 1 and 2 is 3, but it's supposed to be the sum of this. They have a chart to show how that works. So say if you have a, then it leaps to 5, because 3 and the sum of 6, I think. The sum of the next number, the sum of 1 and 2 is 3. The sum of 2 and 3 is 5. So you keep going like that. So it goes from 3 to 5. And then the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. And the sum of 5 and 8 is 13. So it expands and grows exponentially based on the sum of the previous two numbers. That's the sequence that creates all these wondrous links, miraculous links with nature, even pine cones and turtle shells and rocks and other shells. It's just balance and harmony. The ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers approximates the golden ratio. So the ratio between the sequence, how it jumps up to the addition of the previous two numbers, which aren't the same number, it just keeps growing. So you never have the same numbers added together to make the next number. But the ratio of each leap is 1.61. Actually 1.618. So nearly 1.62, which is considered the standard for aesthetic beauty and perfect balance. Spiritually, this represents the golden mean, a state of harmony between the physical and spiritual realms, which is what we want to achieve in our spiritual lives. At least I do. Harmony, a state of harmony. If there would be some way of measuring the ratio of a person before they prayed and while they're praying, or after they've prayed, say contemplated maybe, a contemplative prayer, or definitely in an ecstatic prayer, a prayer of union, they would come up with this number, I'm sure, this ratio. because it's a ratio of perfect balance and harmony, which is just amazing, between the physical and the spiritual. So you'd be taking a physical person engaged in a spiritual activity, and the ratio would be that 1.618. Is my theory, my supposition, my guess. In cycles of life, the recursive nature of the sequence mirrors natural rhythms, such as breathing sequence. The expansion and contraction of the lungs has this same ratio, this golden mean. And the cyclical process of birth, growth, and renewal, it all has this ratio that turns out to be in numbers 1.618. So here's some symbolic interpretations of the Fibonacci sequence. As above, so below. The sequence's appearance in both the macrocosm, or galaxies, and microcosm, such as DNA or human autonomy, is seen as a physical manifestation of the Hermetic principle that all parts of the universe reflect the whole. And as to unity consciousness, because every number is connected to the ones before it, the sequence serves as a reminder of the quantum entanglement and unity of all living beings. Numerological significance. Some traditions associate specific Fibonacci numbers with specific milestones. For example, the number 3 may represent the mind, body, spirit, Trinity, while starting a sequence with 3-3 is sometimes linked to universal ascension and higher frequencies. Example 432 HZ. So I'm not familiar what that was. Hertz or something, I think is the word. Spiritual applications. Meditation. Practitioners often use the Fibonacci spiral as a visual focus to help align their personal energy with universal rhythms and find inner peace that way. And I think those of us who contemplate, meditate, pray, verbal, mental, but then get into contemplation, contemplative, and then when God, the creator, the energy of love, the pure love, God is pure love. So when pure love takes over our contemplation, it leads it into a union. We come in union with pure love, with God. And pure love then guides and leads and manages this prayer, this union. The prayer becomes a union of tremendous inner peace. Energy healing. Some believe that frequencies based on the Fibonacci numbers can clear energy blockages, balance chakras, and stimulate the body's natural self-healing powers. And there again, through prayer, through deep prayer, through the prayer that unites with God's pure love, and either contemplation or on into where the love in us in our contemplation unites with the love of God, his pure love. Then the pure love draws us into itself, into the pure love of God. That's when an ecstatic union occurs. And we lose a sense we're no longer in this dimension. Our soul is taken into God, into pure love. And the pure love is such a force of energy that we no longer have our faculties. We no longer control our body movements or our eyes or our mouth or practically even our breathing and our heart rate. That all goes into a very peaceful, probably a ratio of 1.61 as far as the ratio of a human with perfection, of an utter peace, that ratio or purity anyway, I'm sure it would come to that ratio of the amount of breathing we're doing compared to not breathing at all when in an ecstatic state. Or our heart rate probably goes into that ratio of how much it's beating compared to if it didn't beat at all. So, I mean, that would be interesting study for some scientists to do, or some physiologist. Sacred geometry. It is a fundamental element of sacred geometry, are the spiritual applications of this, used in the design of spiritual architecture, like the Parthenon or ancient temples, to imbue structures with divine proportions. Stonehenge has probably some kind of a degree, mathematical degree, connected with the Fibonacci sequence, or the golden ratio, probably would be. And various churches, old churches, their architecture often was a symbolic application of, even innately, an innate sensing of this beauty of love. It comes out into a mathematical sense, like Plato's brain. Plato was known, I found out from, who was it? Camilla, who had, one of our viewers, who has a master's in philosophy. So she's done a lot of reading and a lot of coursework in which she learned about Plato and his theories and which have come true, his suppositions which have been proven later on in history, that he was considered probably the most intelligent human ever. His mind was one of the greatest minds. And so someone like him, or a person who had that kind of a mind and a sensitivity with God also, probably would create something very along the lines of these numbers and the golden mean, or would use symbols just automatically. Carol, one of our viewers, who's an artist, fine artist, had left a comment that she didn't know why, but not long ago she started using triangles in her art in different ways. And I suspect it's having to do with some connection with God, the Trinity, in an unconscious, subconscious way, beyond our reason, beyond rationale or logic. But part of her being was moved in that way, moved to do that. Spiritually so that the Trinity that dwells within her impressed this, probably the triangular, that unknown to her, she started expressing in her art. So that's a use of sacred geometry. See, here it's giving an example that Fibonacci sequence begins 0, 1, 1, because 0 plus 1 is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. See, 13 and 8 is 21. You add the two numbers previous and go from there. 34, 55, 89, 144, and it just keeps going. But the ratio between the numbers is always 1.618. It's called the golden mean, or the golden ratio. So, the Fibonacci numbers were first described in Indian mathematics as early as 200 BC in work by Pingala on enumerating possible patterns of Sanskrit poetry formed from syllables of two lengths. They are named after the Italian mathematician Leonardo of Pisa, also known as Fibonacci, who introduced the sequence to Western European mathematics in his 1202 book Liber Abaci. Fibonacci numbers appear unexpectedly, often in mathematics, so much so that there is an entire journal dedicated to their study, the Fibonacci Quarterly. Applications of Fibonacci numbers include computer algorithms, such as the Fibonacci search technique and the Fibonacci heap data structure, and graphs called Fibonacci cubes, used for interconnecting parallel and distributed systems. They also appear in biological settings, such as branching in trees. Isn't that something? Even the way the trees branch. The arrangement of leaves on a stem, the fruit sprouts of a pineapple, the flowering of an artichoke, pine cones, brocks, though they do not occur in all species. Fibonacci numbers are also strongly related to the golden ratio. Benet's formula expresses the NF Fibonacci, the golden ratio, and implies that the ratio of two consecutive Fibonacci numbers tends to the golden mean. So anyway, it just goes on. They are closely related to Lucas numbers, which obey the same recurrence relation, and so forth and so on. Let's see what we've got here. I don't want to repeat things too much. We've talked about it appearing in Indian mathematics. Europe. The Fibonacci sequence first appears, we've already had that. It appears in Liber Abaci, the book of calculation by Fibonacci. So, see if there's anything else here. I've already talked about how the Fibonacci sequence symbolizes divine order, interconnectedness, and growth, appearing as a universal blueprint in nature, shells, galaxies, and plants. So here is there's one, oops, went to the wrong symbol. I don't have that now. We've been through the spiritual blueprint, timing of life experiences. Let's go through some of those. The universal blueprint, a divine pattern underlying creation found from DNA to galaxies showing everything is connected. We've talked about that. growth and expansions. The spiritual represents evolution, transformation, and the soul's journey, even with twists and turns moving toward a greater purpose. Harmony and balance symbolizes the perfect proportion and natural symmetry in the world, connecting mathematics and aesthetics and spirituality. Divine timing, a reminder to trust the unfolding of life as experiences, even unexpected ones, are part of a sacred process. So my septic shock on June 23rd and going into June 24th was part of a sacred process. And I had wondered myself regarding, the birth of John the Baptist on June 24th. That's a special day to me. That's part of my spiritual life, my connectedness with John the Baptist. So that was definitely a balance that was meant to be in my life, part of an unexpected sacred process. Inner and outer worlds, that was also the espousal of my soul, was on June 24th, back in 1988. So that was definitely a sacred time in my life, and it had developed from an invitation of my soul in the spring earlier, but also of this breakthrough I had in a psychology course, in my doctorate in psychology, of a course in which I was used as a sample. I volunteered. I had no idea the process was going to unfold as it did with Teresa. I didn't know who she was, but a woman who appeared and started speaking through my voice. First time that had ever happened to a classroom of people. So all of that was part of a sacred process in my growth, my own personal expansion spiritually. And it was the first time that I'd had a locution that went through used my voice to speak the locution. So, see what we have. We have inner and outer worlds. They connect our inner experiences with the outer natural world, revealing hidden patterns of existence. Examples in nature and practice. Nature's patterns seen in sunflower seed arrangements, pine cones, nautilus shells, and branching patterns. Spiritual practices used in meditation. Art, and even music like Bach, Mozart, to find harmony and understand universal principles. Healing, Fibonacci retracement levels are used by healers to align with rhythms for personal growth and transformation. It's true, the healing qualities of music. I listened to music after the surgery I had back in 1987 to see, but what did most for me was listening to the Bible on tape, but one particular book. The person who read the book of Hebrews in this set of tapes I had of the Bible, that voice reading the book of Hebrews somehow did something to my soul and my spirit. It was very resonant voice. It was otherworldly. And it made me understand that the book of Hebrews is mystical. And it was very healing, especially getting into chapter 10 and 11 of the book, of the letter to the Hebrews. So, and some of you may have other reactions at different times. I don't have those tapes anymore. We don't have tape recorders anymore. But if I were listening, I could get it online, someone reading the Bible, I'm sure. And there may be some other book, and it might not even be the person's voice that does it, but the rhythm of the words itself. When I saw that big 54 come at me in my peripheral vision while I was, I think I was doing a video, and I recognized it or something, I was doing something else, recognized it as the 54 with Isaiah. It was a number from the Bible, and I knew it was Isaiah, and I knew God wanted me to read it and also to share it. So I read it in a video, but I also read it myself, and it had additional spiritual impact. I read it back in 1986, Hebrews, and it had an impact that God was my spouse, that God was telling me literally that he was my spouse now. My maker was my husband. And it was to such a reality extent that it really changed my life at that time and helped save me from the pressures, the upset, the ongoing harassment, the ugliness, and the negativity of the divorce. Here came this tremendous positive of God telling me he was my husband now, and he would provide, and he would protect me, and he would take care of my children, and etc. On and on. All the scripture of Hebrews became that reality in a way I had never experienced reading a book of the Bible to make a reality like that. So it was quite something. And I'm sure if, I should ask God, ask the Trinity within, is there a book of the Bible you want me to read? Is there a chapter, even a verse, that you want for me at this time? And God will answer in some way. And often it's in ways that we think, nah, that can't be. Or like that number coming in my, my inner sight, that 54 that was like the 54 out of a Bible. And I knew immediately it meant Isaiah. I could see the print behind the 54. It looked like Isaiah to me. So, and I acted on it. But it could have been the thing, it just about slipped by me because I was doing something else. But it was strong enough and I caught it. We have to catch the clues, because that trains us, that gives us faith, and it trains us in faith. It trains us into the subtlety, the subtle nature of God's pure love, which is God. So it says, in spiritual practices, we can, as I mentioned, use these, even the images of the designs or the numbers themselves, or to meditate on. But I'm not going to do that. I'm at the point where I would rather meditate on Christ or on love, God's pure love. Ask him what is pure love, and help me to have it. And that would become my, and I will meditate on Christ, who had pure love, because he's God. I would meditate on Saint Mary, even, who was born in perfection. She did not have original sin. So, and she had pure love. Well, she did not become God, but she was so united with her Son. That's what we will be. That's what we are. At least that's what I want. I want to be in union with Christ's pure love. We become one with the pure love. We don't become God, but we become as his pure love. And that, if just the anteroom to heaven was so loving and joyous and peaceful and effortless. I want that. And I want to do all I can to embrace and to be given that level of pure love so that I can help others and bring love and all transform negatives, negative situations or people who are down. Or it mentions here next, healing. Fibonacci retracement levels are used by healers to align with natural rhythms for personal growth and transformation. Well, see, if we go beyond Fibonacci numbers, if we go to what is the ultimate, and that's the pure love that creates all these unions, these aberrations in a way, miraculous aberrations that prove the connectedness of all of nature and of all of creation. Probably, like the lunar calendar on the turtle's back, his shell formation is the pentagons all on it, on the back that touch each other's at their vortices. That's a pattern on the back of the hermit shell, and he or she has a pattern on its underside too. And there's just so much in life. The waves of the ocean and the tide and all. There's all kinds of amazing connections with nature, but with this force of love, this energy that is pure love, and that we Christians know as God. God is pure love. So essentially the Fibonacci sequence, is viewed as a sacred code, bridging math and mysticism to reveal the profound, beautiful order within the universe and within ourselves. There's a tremendous order within ourselves. There have been experiments and tests and proofs done of different aspects of our bodily systems and how they connect with nature and with mathematical degrees, and like if they would assign numbers to certain things, they would probably end up with a Fibonacci sequence. So it's just fascinating, and it's an amazing proof of God's existence. He is the creator. We use the label. Well, we have to, but God himself gave the label, Yahweh, way back in early Judaism. So I don't shrink from using a label. I don't think it's uncool. I don't care. That I've died to myself to that extent that I don't care if people think that I am a what do they call it? Bible thumper or something, or I've heard different terms, or a Bible nutcase, or a religious fundamentalist, or derogatory tones, or I think they call Catholics something to do with fish, mackerel snappers or something, because they ate fish on Fridays. They did not eat meat on Fridays for a long, long, long time. Just recently, in the last 50 years, that has changed, or maybe 60 years. Vatican II, I think they eased off that you should not eat meat on Friday. It made it voluntary. It was not obligatory. And for a long time, I didn't. But now it just depends. I tend not to. But if I have like this chicken soup thawed, and if it's going to go bad and I have just enough left to eat one meal, I'll eat it on Friday out of prudence and practicality. and make some other offering to God. I'd like to be more conscious of doing that. I've gotten into the habit of it just being the way it is. If it automatically happens. And I don't eat out, but if I did eat out, for example, I would not order meat then, because I like to be in union with those who do make that sacrifice, or a reminder of Christ. It's a temporal reminder of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion on a Friday. So it's just part of that. And I like to be in union with anyone else who is gathered together for a genuine or a well-intentioned, beautifully, lovingly intentioned spiritual reason. So, in spiritual contexts, the Fibonacci sequence and its resulting spiral represent the divine blueprint of creation. I guess we've already read that spoken in slightly different words, but it's mentions here. It's a sacred aspect of life that is not random, but is governed by a deliberate, harmonious design by the Creator, who I call God. God created these sequences and this design, this harmony, this miraculous way that these shapes keep coming up now, even under the most fine-tuned means they have of seeing into cells or into the human body or into stone or whatever. The expanding spiral symbolizes the journey of the soul and the unfolding of consciousness. Because each number is the sum of the two preceding it, it signifies that our current growth is built upon the foundation of our past experiences. So that's interesting, that how our past experiences build and grow, and that our spiritual life is based on all that has preceded us, but in a degree, in this, the golden mean would be probably if we would figure out, and I had noticed the number 11 kept repeating of major spiritual or major life events. Every 11 years for a while, something major, and also on the 22nd of August, with 11 years apart. That was significant in my life. And I thought it's sort of freaky. Now I'm understanding, no, it's not freaky. These things God creates and builds upon. God is a God of order. He puts things in an order. And he also is a God of miracles. He delights in spontaneity as well, and in love. So somehow, all of these, call them idiosyncrasies, they're not really, patterns, sacred patterns, they are designed and intended, and they are unique to each person, yet also connected to each of us as a whole. We all have them, in other words. So it's really rather amazing. And even if you're not spiritually inclined or not Christian, this still should have great spiritual impact, because everyone has a spirit. Everyone is spiritual, even if they are not Christian, or they're not Jewish, or whatever religion. We all have souls. We all have spirit. And and we have this growth and evolution. Many believe the sequence acts as the divine mathematical language of nature. found in everything from the structure of DNA and fingerprints to the spiral arms of galaxies. Balance and harmony. The spiral reflects the golden ratio, a proportion considered aesthetically perfect and spiritually balancing. It's this certain spiral, or a spiral, like the galaxy spiral. It embodies the concepts of as above, so below, linking the macrocosm of the universe to the microcosm of the individual. Cycles of life. The pattern represents the rhythm of life, expansion, rest. Expansion, rest, retracement, and then further evolution back to expansion, rest, retracement. Expansion, rest, retracement. I have been in a mode of rest, and then I went into retracement. So I'm in that mode right now myself. So, cycles of life, the pattern represents the rhythm of life, expansion, rest, retracement, and further evolution. This cycle is often compared to the breath, an inhale, growth, followed by an exhale, reflection and recalibration. Unity consciousness, seeing the same pattern in a sunflower and seeing also the same pattern in a hurricane, serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of all living things, fostering a sense of peace and unity. Spiritual practitioners often use Fibonacci spirals as tools for meditation and visualization to align their personal energy with the natural frequencies of the cosmos. So that's interesting. The golden ratio, represented by the Greek letter phi, and the Fibonacci sequence are deeply intertwined. The ratio of two consecutive Fibonacci numbers approximates the golden ratio with increasing accuracy as the sequence progresses. So I'm not going to go over that again. I think we've got that idea, but it even happens with the convergence. If you divide any number in the Fibonacci sequence, immediately preceding it, the quotient is always close to 1.618. So if you divide, you will come up with that 1.618. The limit. In mathematical terms, the golden ratio is the limit of the ratios of successive Fibonacci terms as n tends to infinity. Benet's formula. This formula allows you to calculate any nth Fibonacci number directly using the golden ratio without needing the preceding two numbers. The golden rectangle. The golden rectangle is a rectangle whose side lengths are in the golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1. Spirals, when squares with side lengths equal to the Fibonacci numbers are placed together, they form a Fibonacci spiral. As the squares grow larger, this spiral becomes virtually indistinguishable from a true golden spiral. Practical and natural applications. The mathematical duo dictates the efficient packing and growth patterns found throughout the universe. Plant growth. Sunflowers and pine cones use the proportions to arrange seeds and scales as tightly as possible to maximize space. The human body and DNA molecules exhibit these ratios in their structures and dimensions. Architects and artists such as Leonardo da Vinci have used these proportions for centuries to create compositions that are naturally pleasing to the human eye. Let's see what we've got here, if there's anything of additional. I think we've gone through this. Whoops, did this close? I think this is still going. The actual spiral reminds me of the round kind of shell, or also of a snail. Even the snail that comes out of its shell and curls up, or even those little pill bugs that curl up, they look like a Fibonacci spiral. Trying to find a picture of it that I can expand a little bit. Well, I guess I can't. Let me show you up in the corner of my, if I can get it up there close enough. There, see it? That's a Fibonacci spiral right there. And a galaxy is an example of one. So I think I've gone through all of these. I think I have, yeah. So anyway, that's the Fibonacci numbers, or sequence of numbers, the Fibonacci spiral. And there's a connection of the Greek letters for Jesus, ichthus or something, or I don't know what. Anyway, that's fish, I guess. But they have fishes connected somehow in this, that somehow they come up with the 888 through mathematical and through Fibonacci sequencing of it, and designating a numeric value to the Greek alphabet. So, and that was interesting because of the sequence, and then because of the devil comes out as 666. So, and there's more to it than what I'm expressing, but it's all intended, it's all meant by a force beyond us. The one who created the entire universe, the cosmos, and heaven that's beyond the cosmos, is what they've recently analyzed and figured, where the place of heaven is. That we will pass through this universe and enter in. And all I know is that I was traveling like faster than light or something, and came to this huge like an anteroom to heaven, or else I was in the middle with God, and he just didn't allow me to see, which could be with my inner sight, that it was precluded from he did not will me to, because he was sending me back and wanted me to have, for some reason, not have that vision of what it's like there, unless that was it, which was just vast, like being out, vast out in the universe. So, but I didn't see others, so I was not shown others. And from other people who have gone, unless it is that we see what we need to see, which I don't think is the case, because some of the people who did go and came back were highly spiritual people, and they saw things. So, but who knows? So who knows our level of faith? Really, I don't know my level of faith. There's no way to really judge, other than we know our level of love by our closeness with God. And I think that is pivotal in communicating with God, is love, the amount of love, and the depth of the communication we'll have. But it's possible for us to grow in love. It's possible for us to learn to be positive by stopping the negative, removing ourselves or turning what negatives we can into positives. Removing from negative that will not budge, say if it's beyond our control. But if we come to love, to enough love, but if that's the one thing I've noticed in Scripture, people who were adamant, Jesus did not force anything ever. He let them walk away. He would let people walk away, or if he was in the midst, he would walk through their midst. That's several times in Scripture. He walked through their midst. Jesus walked through their midst. Went on to the next place, walked through their midst. When they were going to throw him, his hometown people were, his homies. They were going to throw him off a cliff. They led him to a cliff, but he walked through their midst. Walking through their midst saved him because he had a time and a way that the Father wanted. And so he did not get discouraged. And he was very disheartened that Judas decided to take his own life because he missed probably the golden mean. He took himself out of the Fibonacci sequence. If we could figure out things in Judas' life, it probably would be that. In other words, he took himself out of God, away from God, and out of the love, out of the positive, and into negative. And you don't want to leave this world that way. And that's a hell, I think, to choose opposite of love, which is God, and good, and truth, and light, etc., etc. So, anyway, just wanted to share the Fibonacci sequence, how it is, how it's set up, and the amazing things in nature that has the sequence in it, like the numbers of what would be in the sequence, a certain amount of sequence of it, or the ratio, the golden ratio, or the golden mean. It's all in nature, and it repeats. And I also like this thing, it's because it's what God was saying to me to do. The rest, or the growth, the rest, the retracement. The growth, the rest, the retracement. And I'm in retracement now, where I went back over some things, and now I'm on the verge of expansion again, the growth again. And it's exciting. And so I'm no longer going to view rest as a negative at all. It's part of this cycle. And but it's an important thing to know not to stay in too long beyond when we start to get the retracement, where we start to make connections, and then see a connection to a greater extent. Then we know it's time to expand, that God is expanding us. We're not doing it, but by our cooperation and our recognition and our effort, though, our effort to cooperate, to choose, to use our will, to choose love over darkness and ugliness, and over negativity, to choose positivity over negativity, and to do whatever it is that we need to do to create the positive that will lead us forth. So this is really huge to me, because I am a negative person. I'm seeing that now. My kids say I'm negative. Well, the pain, they were viewing the pain as negative because I would at times. It hurts, yes, but I've got to embrace it as a positive always, because it is what I learned from the pain has far outweighed any of the suffering. And it's given me this life that I would not have. I would have been out in the world with very little time to do all this praying and learning and growing and sharing, and all the watercolors I did of shells, and I to have that time period. Even God let me be a stay-at-home mom, something I don't think my kids stopped to realize, and also made me so I was unmarriageable to a humanoid. So it's, that could have brought in all kinds of factors that could have been very distressing in my family, to my children. You just never know what you bring in when you remarry. You don't know, because it's another human being with their own factors. Look what I had when I married someone who had issues and wasn't that interested in the children, other than at certain points. At times he was, especially if other people were around. He'd be very involved and looked like the good dad and stuff. And I think there's an element of all of us in wanting to look good in front of other people if we are at a point in our life where we're insecure and we want to make a good impression. We should. It's a positive to want to make a good impression as opposed to a bad one. But so I would have had a lot of my love on a humanoid instead of the children. A lot of my time would be spent with this new husband. And so, they were blessed beyond measure. And I'm realizing that. And I had, especially when it came very clear that Christ was my spouse. And he meant it. But he does not take away from the children. He adds to, see. So, whereas a human doesn't always, because we're human, unless we're all on the same page at the same time, which we do have interconnectedness. But what makes the best marriages is when they both are on this love of God and wanting to learn God's love, his pure love, and become his pure love, and actively work and cooperate with God toward that end. And the power and the energy of pleasing God, just think of it. It's transforming. That's transformation right there, is pleasing him by choosing good and positive. Lovey he sees the dogs out there, but they need to go someplace. We're gonna go someplace. We gotta run an errand anyway, so that'll get them happy. Give them something to do. God bless you all.